after I met Baba in New York that time, I knew how important he was. Whether he was Avatar, I didn't pretend to know what an Avatar was or had to do. But I certainly knew he was a top drawer man. So I just knew immediately that the very best thing I could do for my own problems in life was to open my heart to Baba. I've never been one, let's say, to feel that I should lay my problems on his knees. A lot of people, feel that just surrender and let Baba take it on from there. That's never appealed to me. In fact, Baba never told me to do that. I've never been around when he told somebody to do it, but I hear it's a pretty good faith, so I'm not saying it isn't. But I just have the feeling that I opened my heart, but I very carefully reserved two areas of my life because they were so important to me, and I felt I didn't want anybody mucking it up. Excuse me, Bob. So somewhere or another, I knew within those 2-3 weeks after getting back from New York that those, for better or for worse, I was going to reserve for myself. One of them, and I'm sure that intuitively you would quickly guess what those two reserved areas were: sex life and money.
Not rock and roll?
No rock and roll.
Hadn't been invented yet.
My brothers were rock and rollers and I didn't like it. So I just sort of reserved those. I just wanted to tell you that the amazing thing was that I knew, that Baba knew, that I had reserved those areas. And in the intervening years, and I think it must have been at least 6 or 8 years that intervened, where I just felt that there was tremendous interchange between us and all the other areas of my life. But none there, on none of the visits, did he refer either to sex or finances. So I just said to myself, well, he certainly observes very, very carefully, let's say, the niceties of human relationship. I sort of invented a term to myself. I had not invited him in those two departments of my life. And he didn't open the door and trudge in any of it. It was terrific. He didn't knock, he didn't make any effort to say, well, Don, don't you think it's about time or something like that? Meanwhile, I was making a merry mess up of both of them. But, just quickly to skip over those 6 or 8, we got 2-3 things we got to cover this afternoon. And finally, I remember one day I had a little apartment on Bush Street in San Francisco, and I remember I was walking around hither and yon and doing things. Suddenly I looked at these 2 compartments of my life, and I just said, good heavenly days, nobody could do worse than you've done in this length of time. So I just said, Baba, come in, you can't possibly do worse than I have. Now, I didn't intend that as a direct telegraphic message to Baba, but within 24 hours, both of those areas started moving, and they moved fast. This is just the way it worked. And I knew that he knew, and he said, all right, now we're going to get things moving along. He didn't solve them, there were lots of problems and lots of things happening badly, but still, I knew that things were on a positive path from that point on. No miracles. I just have to tell you that one of those 2 just went along and along and along and along. And even after I knew that it was moving and Baba was involved, it just seemed to me it was always exactly the same. Same old problems repeating themselves. Don Stevens not doing any better. The Avatar wasn't smiling at me, So, and this to me is one of the most astounding things that ever happened to me in my life. One day, one of these 2 was just in all of its full glory, complicated, constraining, worrisome, troubling. I wasn't worried about it, but you know, it had the aspects you had to pay a lot of attention to, and it wasn't working right. The next day, finished. Can you imagine? Over.
Wow.
Yeah. And I said to myself, good heaven, I didn't do any miracles. I wasn't conscious of anything significant happening at the last minute there between one day and the other. And so finally it's funny, I always have to have a mechanical, some sort of physical model in my mind about things. And I just sort of suddenly saw the bust of a Roman emperor standing on a pedestal. And here is this marble bust that I've been seeing, you know, every time I go into the museum of my workshop. And always the same bust there, it looks exactly the same. And one day, it's disappeared. What under the sun has happened to it? And I knew, you know, that this was my particular problem, that I'd opened up to Bob and still didn't seem to make any progress. And I just sort of had the mental image of a fantastic sculptor with a sculpting tool carving in from the back side. I was always looking at it from the front side. And it was being hollowed out little by little by little by little from where I was not observing it. My viewpoint vantage was not from there. But nevertheless, the substance of that bust was disappearing from behind. And it was getting paper thin, undoubtedly, but to me, it still looked as solid as ever. And finally, a couple of little scrapes and it was gone.
That's beautiful.
This to me, was an absolutely incredible experience. So I would say, if you really have been working away at something, and you say, well, gee whiz, even the avatar doesn't seem to be helping me with this one. Don't lose faith, because something real has to be going on with it, and one day it'll disappear. The second thing that absolutely stunned me about that was that in that whole area of my life, nothing changed except the compulsion aspect of it. I lived it. I enjoyed the whole area. You might say the aesthetics of enjoyment was still there in place, but there was absolutely no compulsion, forwards, backwards, sideways, or anything. I just lived it through, and with a tremendous sense of enjoyment and freedom. Particularly in the Marseille group in France, we had a professor of mechanical engineering who was a very, very frank guy. And he always used to say, my sans serif, I don't want to lose them, I enjoy them. I always had a great deal of sympathy for that. And I tell you, don't feel that when you say, well, I've surrendered myself to Baba, okay, did you tell him about it? Do it. Do it. Preferably do it out loud. My greatest lesson in that, Adele, shall I tell him about when my mother died? I wrote him a letter, and he got it. I don't even think I sent it airmail. And so the next time I got to India, I noticed that Baba seemed strangely cool and distant. And so finally, the second day comes and Baba's still cool and distant. And I say afterwards to Harish, what's eating Baba? Now, I think those are the exact words I used. And he said, well, Don, you don't realize, but when he got your letter that your mother had died, he was really rather irritated. And so I thought to myself, well, what's the matter? And so I brought it up with Baba when he came into Mondeley Hall. We were just Harish and Bob and myself talking about some editing work. And so I said, Baba, you really have been quite different, and did something bother you? And he said, well, Don, I had your letter about your mother's death. And I said, well, yes, Baba, yes, I told you. And he said, why didn't you send me a telegram? Well, you know, I asked myself, first of all, were you pinching pennies again, Don? And I decided it hadn't been that exactly. Might have been an element, but it wasn't the controlling motivation. I said quite brightly, and it was truthful. I said, Baba, I finally know that you are God, and I also know that God knows everything. And so I thought he didn't even need a letter, actually, but I said it. And so he looked sort of happy and pleased, and then he comes right back to the subject. He says, but Don, you know, you and I live within creation with its limitations of time and space. And we both live subject to its restrictions. Now, I live by its restrictions, you live by it. And so I want you each time that important things happen in your life, even medium things that happen in your life, to get in touch with me by the most available physical means. Now, can you imagine the avatar saying that? Does that say something? And suddenly it struck me, my golly, when the creator of natural law says I live by the restrictions that I've created, and I just don't wave my magic wand and I move outside of it because it's easier that way. No. And it says something awfully fundamental and important about the functioning of a really, really perfect master. So I always followed that from that point on. So invite him in. And when you do something about it, don't say, well, Baba knows all about it and so on. Tell Baba about it.
Send him an email.
Yeah. Don't even send it email.
Don't call him on yourself.
Yeah. Well, after that, I first of all tried making my report to Bob after he dropped the body by thinking a message to him. And for some reason or another, there just never seemed to be any sort of suit to what I was doing. And then I tried to figure out, well, what's wrong? It doesn't seem to have any life or natural. So I said to myself, well, I'm going to try saying it out loud. And again, I'm this 50% good old stable conservative Swede. I don't know why they're so conservative, but they are. So I said, well, maybe I ought to try saying it out loud and see what happens. I felt this was my early days when I got embarrassed by these things. So I carefully closed the doors and then started saying in a rather low voice, Baba this and that and type thing and so on and so on. And everything that I made in that particular report, it felt good. And again, the next day things moved in 2 or 3 of the compartments that I've been telling him. They took on a life and they moved. So this business of doing it by the laws of creation, not depending on miracles or psychic phenomena and so on, it makes sense. Now, that brings us up. I think we've covered the backlog, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ready to get back to discourses and listen to humanity.
Yeah. Listen to Humanity was the next one that came along. In what year was it that there was the 3 incredible weeks? 1954. Baba invited, I think 30 some odd Westerners to come and see him. And because I was in the hospital with a kidney infection, I couldn't go. And so when I got out of the hospital, Baba sent a note through Mommy that he was sorry, but he would make it up to me. The next year, he was having a 4-language group, Sahabas. And so he invited, the only Westerners to be invited were Francis Bravazan and myself. So went to it. There's a long story about finances. Maybe tomorrow we'll have time to go into a wonderful story. Baba told me personally how he worked out the finances for those 4-language groups with Padre. And what Baba went through with Padre was an absolute facsimile of what I go through all of the time in my petroleum business. Would you imagine that? And when he would change something or another, a new element came up, he would sit down with Padre and discuss it and how it could be resolved before he would say this or that, yes, they can do this, or no, they can't do that. He just didn't say, I'm the avatar, and Padre, you've got to do that. It wasn't that way. This is important. This is really important. Baba functioned that way with Padre. The 2 people that Baba worked on, always on finance, high finance, and particularly foreign currency, with Meherji. And when he worked with MeherG on it, he would throw everybody out of Mondelez, including Irish. The only times I got to stick around even was when I was involved in the part of the world where the foreign finance was involved and to help out the situation. So I got to sit in on several of the meetings that Bob had with MeherG. And again, I just tell you that Baba's acuity in how he handled these things could knock spots off of the best of our foreign currency experts in the company. He was terrific at it. And as far as, let's say, the more local family finance of Merabat and Marazat, that he would work out with Padre. And he told me about 2 or 3 of his discussions with Padre, so I would know how he went about it. I don't know why he did all of these things, but at any rate, I did see Baba in these 2 types of finance. He took care of it with a care and an acumen which were absolutely incredible. So on this occasion, I go to the first week of the 4 language groups Avas, and at the end of it, we're up on top of Mandalay Hill. Oh golly, do you think we've got time for Irene Connie Bear?
Oh.
You knew Irene, didn't you?
Who was that?
Irene Connie Bear?
Who is?
Yeah, she was quite a character, wasn't she? To put it mildly.
She had a strange illness.
Irene did?
Well, she wrote very interesting science books. Her father was a top scientist.
Yes, that's right.
So she was privileged to ask questions about outer space.
I didn't get in on any of those,
Yes.
but I did get in on her project to get Bob, the handprint of Baba's hand. So it was this time when I was finishing off the week and Baba said, well, Don, I'm going to sit up on top of the hill, and at the end of the day, we'll sit and chat and I'll say goodbye to you. But when Baba is out there sitting, I'm stored upstairs over the water tank with Francis, and I see Baba, and somebody says, Don, Baba's about ready to see you. And Irene Connie Bear comes up, lugging a great big flat plate glass, a roller, a pot of printer's ink, and 3 or 4 great big huge beautiful sheets of paper. And so as I'm getting down, somebody says, well, Irene Connie Bear just butted in. Anyway, she just came in, and she I gotta watch my P's and Q's. This is being recorded back there.
Very smart, very, very intelligent woman.
Yeah, but, well, yes. So Irene Connie Bear, they tell me, says that she's always had a project of getting the print of Baba's hand for posterity. So Baba sees Irene, I see him seeing Irene Connie Bear come up, and I sort of know I've got to hold back for a few minutes, but I'm much younger than Irene. So she comes up and tells Baba what she wants to do, and Baba sort of turns up and looks at me like that, you know, while Irene's getting things sorted out here. But, you know, when Baba hams up something, he is the best actor that I've ever been to in my life, you know. She can be doing this, and Baba gives you a look like that, and there is just a whole volume expressed in that little So here he is, and Irene's doing this and explaining to me, now Baba, I've got to have this sitting right here beside you, and I'm going to put the ink and I roll it out, and it's got to be rather thin, otherwise we've just got a big splotch and none of the lines in your hand. So Baba's giving me these asides, you know, sort of questioning, right? Whenever Irene's doing this or that action, Baba gives another look, sometimes up to heaven. And finally, Irene said, well, I think it's about ready, Mom, and she gets a big sheet of paper out. I can't remember how she supported that. But at any rate, she takes Baba's right hand, and she's concentrating on that. And here's the plate glass with the ink rolled out. She gets that, and Baba looks at me like this, you know, and his eyes sort of droop. And so Irene gets it over and puts it on, splat, onto the white paper. And there's about 5 times too much ink anyway. And it is a great big splat. So she says, Baba, we've got a little bit too much ink. And so here we are. And she sort of wipes Baba's hands and rolls it some more and gets another piece of paper out. And she said, I think it's all right this time, Baba. Bah, down it goes. Well, you know, again, still too much even Bob at this point. He really rolls his eyes to heaven while he was spreading it out. It's exactly like that. He did it, Ed. Yeah, that was a good roll. So, I wish you could have seen Ed Flanagan at that point. Adele. So,
She's always interested in your poem.
he knows how to roll his eyes. Well, I'm glad to know where really good eye rolling comes from. So here we are. It's also good exercise, I think. So third time, Irene gets it all ruled out in her third piece of paper, and she says she got a beautiful one. So she wipes Baba's hands for several minutes, and I'm waiting in the wings there while, you know, what the Avatar goes through. Isn't it amazing, these things? And so finally she gets them all cleaned up, and so Baba is ready for me, and I come over and sit down beside him. He wants to know how are things going. Did you enjoy it? And what about this and what about that? Was the food all right? His younger brother, Adi Jr., and his wife, Franny, would come up at lunchtime and sit with Francis and me, and then for dinner, and then they would go back home early, and we'd go to bed. That was the regular routine. How were they? Did they treat you properly? No. All of these points of courtesy. And so then finally he looks over, there's a little low table sitting at the side of his chair. And on that I had noticed a sheaf of papers maybe so high, rather nondescript looking pieces of paper. And I wondered what under the sun they were. So finally he puts his hand over there and motions his eye down to him and said, now Don, you've been working on God Speaks, and it is all finished off now. You and I, we did a lovely job on that. And, you know, it occurred to me, because each time that I give out an address when I'm going to a public meeting of my devotees, I carefully prepare. An address or two or three, and I always say that, and he indicated that the manner when he would give out a public address before he would give the basic material to a Mandali. The Mandali would take it back to his room. The Mandali would then write it up more completely, take it back to Baba the next morning, and Baba would go over it word by word and do exactly as he had had Arish described to me twice. Baba indicated to me that these addresses that he had given to public addresses of groups was handled in precisely the same manner as the 8 first chapters of God Speaks. Well, that was important to me, because again, we'll get a little bit later into something else why these words given in this fashion are so terribly important.
Do you know what addresses those were?
I certainly do, and they are part 2 of Listen Who Meant It. So, Baba said, now, these were given out in such and such a specific manner that's been explained to you carefully, and perhaps, he says, some of these addresses were fairly short, some of them maybe a page or 2. And he said, you may wish to take them and sort them out by subject matter and arrange something somewhat like the discourses that I have given out in the discourse volume. And he said, would you like to do that? And I said, well, Bob, it's a pretty big challenge. It's a lot more fundamental than, of course, I had to do when you asked Ivy and me to work on God Speaks. And he said, well, if you would like to do it, then take them with you. And I'll have Ramju Abdullah work with you if you have any questions at all. And then he started thinking, and he said, now, when I stopped thinking of it, this would make a small book. But if you were interested in a larger book, I've got another idea. You listen to me. I have 2 secretaries who have been taking down word for word my part of the work of the meetings in Mondley Hall here at MeherBabaLibrary. And if you would like to do this, I will have the secretary send you the transcript of my words during the entire Savas period. And you could then put sort of a frame around it, give sort of a narration. You've been here, you know the atmosphere, sort of put a frame around it and use that as the center part, and that would make a much longer word. And of course, certainly, if you're going to do that, then you must also give your own impressions and ideas and your own inner feeling about the series and about Bob if you want to. In other words, something about how Don views Bob in this relationship and maybe any great parts or any parts that were difficult to work out. He invited it as part of the 3 things to be then worked out. So I said, well, Bob, that sounds fascinating. And yes, I would really enjoy doing it very much. So the transcript, which was the second thing that he suggested, is part 1 of Listen to Humanity. And what Bob has said in that, which I quote him as saying, comes directly from the Secretary's transcripts. The framework where Don is giving sort of a poetic version of sunsets and the 2 native Indian people who were caring for us, who were absolutely charming, so wonderful. All of that was Bob's suggestion. And then part 3, where I just sort of open up and express some of Stevens' experiences and some of the really deep, sincere doubts and problems that I had in relating to Bob before he even came in person to America, and I met him in '52. I just opened up. And then when I saw what I had read, I said, gee, when any of Baba's real Mondalian lovers get to read this, they'll have my scalp. But none of them ever did. And that has always really amazed me, Glenn.
Why would they?
Why was it?
Why would they have your scalp?
Well, if you're not completely loyal to the avatar, they can get very ferocious sometimes, I found.
So you were just being honest about your doubts?
I was just saying honestly about myself. Obviously, the 2 things that I had real trouble with when I first heard from Mercer to Morton, Marina Machiavelli in Fairfax, Elizabeth Patterson with Mildred Kyle sitting at the side at the Sufi School in Fairfax, our first contact direct with people who had been with Baba. Marina Machiavelli tossed out a few things that were pretty hard to digest. In fact, she could be very dramatic, and I'm not a terribly dramatic person. I've gotten to be maybe a little humorous in my old age because Baba sort of leavened me up a little bit. So, anyway, it was quite a bit. So in part 3, I just sort of leveled a bit. Baba's silence and calling himself the Avatar, which I thought at that point was shockingly unmodest, bothered me. And it took me about 7 years to digest those 2 things. It was just in 1952 when I more or less finished digesting primarily what I heard from Marina. And interesting enough, I want to tell you that gradually, after '52, I got to know Marina. And I think she was one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever been around. I kicked myself all over the lot at Dell, and my first thoughts about Marina. And I know she knows it. So here we were. This then became Listen to Humanity. If there's anything you want to ask about that, I've tried to be as honest with you as I can be. The good parts and the not so good parts, and where they came from, what is direct from Baba. But the important thing here is that part 2 of Listen to Humanity has the exact same handling history as the first 8 chapters of God Speaks. This is important, and I'll tell you why later. Yes, Ed?
Have you ever thought of writing a footnote, like a supplement to part 3 on your 20 years later take on your first impressions?
Well, no, Ed, that creative item had never occurred to me. And so I'm not sure it's going to get written. Maybe that's what saved my neck so far, and I'm not anxious to get it chopped. So.
Well, I mean, you came around to a change from those ideas. And for posterity, I think it would be important for people to see how that transition occurred.
Well, if I remember in the 2nd edition to Listen to Humanity, then I go into what happened to me in Baba's avatarhood, which was the principal thing that was a deep concern to me. So read the second, what did I call it? Anyway.
Edition.
Second edition?
The 2nd edition, yeah.
Part 3.
The introduction to the 2nd edition introduction, where I bring things up to date, more or less confess what's happened to me in avatarhood, and because I remember silence too. I just tell you one quick one about the silence, because that may not have gotten included. I remember one day when I was at work as a process engineer before I went to work for Standard of California, but I was a process engineer in an aircraft factory. And meanwhile, trying to sit on this sort of old ladies' retirement home, which the Fairfax Sufi School had become. And when Hazel Armstrong, Morton's secretary, who ran the place, died, and I inherited it, between what I promised Baba to do, doing my research work in the laboratories, and trying to run the old ladies' home, I got, if I was lucky, 2 hours of sleep a night. And when I would go to work and sit at my desk where I was the process engineer, I'd be so dead dog tired that I wouldn't know how I'd get through the day. And so all of a sudden I remembered Baba's silence. That really beats me. And so I'm feeling sort of indigestible about it every time I thought about it. And I was feeling like death warmed over and like I'd like to fall asleep any second. And all of a sudden I think, Baba's silence. Well, I wonder. So I tried deliberately when I was at work that morning to be silent at my desk for at least half, 3/4 of an hour. And if anybody had come by and wanted to talk to me, I'd just wave my hand like that and sort of shove them off. And at the end of half, 3/4 of an hour, I was totally rested. And so now that did not tell me why the avatar was silent, but it taught me something about perhaps the impact of silence in my own personal life. And that almost began to open up a possibility to me why the avatar, with a monumental universal work to do in creation, might use such an improbable tool. That was only actually one part of the things that began to unravel on the silence. But after 7 years, I'd unraveled enough, so it was perfectly digestible to me. It took a lot of work yet. Well, so we've got listen humanity. So we skip on to the discourses, which was the third great thing. Remember, all of this work was being done when much of the time I was now being sent out actually to Europe instead of being sent on technical service missions within the United States. They put me over as a technical person in crude oil sales to accompany some of their crude oil ventures. So again, I was going through the same routine that I had during the editing of God Speaks. Field trips, ships, airplanes, airports, strange hotels, technical meetings, etc., you name it. And so all of Listen Humanity was put together actually when I was almost all of the time doing exactly that same sort of constant motion in strange environments. It got to be a hallmark. I've got some thoughts on that also as well. So all of this was going on, and finally, when Listen Humanity was accepted by Dodd Mead and published by them, and for the first time in, that was about 5-6 years by then, but I've been working all of the time in these impossible environments, just working like a son of them.
You're all
Sorry.
It's all right.
Almost okay, you say something. So, here we are, and Dodd Mead had taken project number 2. I'm off on a field trip and just enjoying lovely life, beautiful hotels, lovely restaurants, scenic trips in part of the world I've never been before, and meeting charming people, and off to India to see Baba because I wasn't far away, and Baba says, how's everything going? It's great that you've got Listen Humanity accepted by Dodd Mead also and published. And I said, yes, Baba, and you know what he says to me? Here I am, relaxing for the first time in years, and Baba's next question is, and what are you doing about Baba's works? Isn't that heartless? Excuse me, Baba, but thunderstruck, you know, that he could ask me a question like that the first moment that I've had to breathe and relax. So I thought, good heavens, is he angling at something? And so I thought I'd better get him off the track fast. So what can I say to Bob, you know, which will please him and sort of divert the subject a bit? So I said, well, Bob, about your words, to be honest with you, I've just been enjoying the magnificence of your presence. You like that one, Pi? I thought it was pretty good too. So,
Did it work?
well, you got to hear the sequel to this one, you know, boy. Yeah. So, yes, Bob looks at me and he beams, he smiles. He changes the subject, and I thought, boy, that was a successful diversion. Success. For 5 minutes. All of a sudden, Bob looks at me like this and says, seriously, Don, what are you doing about my words? So right back on track again. You know, when the avatar gets on the trail of something, he's indivertible. Is that proper pronunciation? Indivertible. You can't get him off course anyway. So I knew what he was talking about, because strangely enough, as I was coming on the plane to get to visit Baba at this time, I had sort of a feeling, this is too good to last. Maybe I ought to do something about it, because it felt so unusual. And I have a horrible tendency to have a guilty conscience over nothing at all. So here I was, and I knew what Baba was talking about, so I said, well, I better buckle down to it. And I said, well, Baba, you know, actually I was wondering the same thing. What am I now doing about Baba's words? And I went on, because this had gone through my mind. If there is something I would enjoy doing at this point, now that I've got leisure, I would enjoy going for the first time in 10 years back over the discourses and rereading them. And I had originally read them, I thought, well, this is some pretty great work. I didn't think it was colossal. I didn't think it anywhere came close to the philosophy of God speaks, but still, I want to reread it. So I said, Bobby, you know, I think I would like to go back and reread the discourses again. And he looks at it, yes, that's a good idea, a very good idea. So I registered this in my mind. At least I think I've got it registered, and off I go back home. It couldn't have been 2 months later. I was back in the same part of the world and had a chance to stop by Baba. And of course, you know what happened. I'm in there and Baba says, did you have a good sleep? Did you have a good digestion? Did you have a good toilet this morning? Well, not too good, Baba. About 30% of the time, you know, especially when I travel, well, that department gets a little bit doubtful on occasion. And so when it did, you see, she's used to my morning diet now, so she knows what this is all about. Well, I wouldn't let her give me a Iranian breakfast, because I'm on diet to keep things regular, you see. It's all Baba's fault.
No, you can just tell them the flight was delayed.
Tell him what?
The flight was delayed.
Oh, well, at any rate, it gets to be a problem sometime if you're constantly in traveling, and Baba knew it. So if I said, well, not very good, then Baba would motion over to Eric and say, get the orange drink. And I thought it was some sort of, you know, Fanta, orange Fanta or something like that he was feeding me. And so, but the strange thing is, this orange Fanta, 15 minutes later, I'd have to excuse myself. It was fast acting. It was the fastest acting and I thought it was Pepsi-Cola orange drink or something like that. So then I'd come back and so on, but on this particular occasion, Bob had gone all through that, and I was in pretty good shape. And so then his fourth question was, and the discourses? I'd forgotten totally. Can you imagine? You're rolling your eyes again, Ed. So here I was, you know, caught right where it was too bad to be. And so Baba, I said, Baba, I'm ashamed of myself, really. Life has been so busy and chaotic, I haven't had a chance. Off I go, and you know, the second time, exactly the same thing happened. I couldn't believe that I would do that 2 times in a row. So I was really embarrassed, and Bob sort of rolled his eyes a little bit, are we ever going to get Don on the straight and narrow? So the third time I come back, but this time I've read about half of them already. And it was about the time when we had the first invasion of the hippies in San Francisco. Mercy the Deuce telephoned me one day and said, Don, there are 4 very strange boys who came up and knocked at something or another, Sutter Street in Van Ness. The quarters were at that point.
1290, Sutter.
1290, bless your heart. So 1290 it was then. And she said, it's what I think people call hippies nowadays. And they're very interested in the icon's poetry. And so that's why they knocked, and we told them about MeherBaba, and they wanted to know some more. And she said, I don't know how to talk to these people. Can I make a date for them to come and see you? So here I am living on North Point Avenue or something like that, up near Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. A fairly conservative sedate place, and I'm renting an apartment. And so I said, well, okay, tell them to come up at such and such a time. So the front door, I'm up on the 2nd floor. The owner has the ground flat. And here they come in the late afternoon, and when I opened my door, I couldn't believe what was standing in front of me. If I have ever seen a sorrier looking female, this was it, the sorriest. They had long hair, which they obviously hadn't washed in at least 6 months, all sort of tangled up. It was a mess. Their blue jeans certainly hadn't been washed in a year. Here they were, and I was going, my gosh, did my landlord see them? So I invited them in, sat them down over on the far side of the night. And I was looking at them, and one of them started to say something, and I was so busy inspecting what they looked like. I didn't particularly hear what he was saying, and then somebody else said something, and about the third person made some sort of a comment. I began to focus, and something in me said, this guy is asking an intelligent question, and I was impressed. So I forgot all about their looks, and said, this is not bad at all. And so I answered, and another fellow answered me. And first thing you know, I was in the middle of one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever had in my life. I said, they mean business, they're sincere, and they're deeply intelligent, and they are diligently and meaningfully searching. So I was tremendously impressed. Well, try to finish that off. They came back a week later. I didn't care whether the landlord saw them or not this time. And when they got through, I said, you are asking very basic questions about basic mysticism. And what you're asking is good, and I like it. And I said, I also just have to tell you that what you're asking about is not something we can just sort of tackle, hit, and miss. But I've been thinking a little bit, if you're game to do it, I'm game to do it. What would you think about meeting, let's say, every Monday at 6:30, and we'll have an hour and a half back and forth on some phase about some great mystic back in history. And I know a few of them, and a few of them I don't know, but I'm willing to do some homework and some studying, and we'll go through some of the major outlines of basic ancient mystic history. And I would be interested if you are. That's great. So the next Monday at 6:30, I'm up at the 1290 Sutter Street address, and they're there, but there's more than 4. I think there were 9 at that point. And I was a little surprised, and I said, oh, some of your friends. And, oh, yes, everybody's very interested in what we're doing. Well, I said, okay, all right. So the next Monday, we're there, and I think there were 17 there at that point. And I was getting a little distressed because I like it, when it's sort of an easy give and take between, maybe at most 6 or 8 people sort of around a little quiet, pleasant circle together. When it got up to, I think, 27, I called over the leader, and when we were leaving, I said, now look, I give you an absolute flat comment. I am good to go to 35, but for some reason or another, I'm not going to go beyond 35. So the next time they were 35, and I said, now look, when we get done with some of your other friends, we're going to do 3 months of this. That was our original agreement. And if you want to do another group, another one, all right, we'll do a second one. I did 2 years of those introductory ones to the hippies. And that was one of the greatest experiments, I can't call it experiments, but experiences I ever engaged in my life. It was fascinating. And so many of those people I still know. So many of them have worked into distinguished careers. You know, after 2-3 weeks, somebody would think to wash his hair, and maybe somebody would wash out their blue jeans. First thing you know, they sort of looked almost shiny and washed. They did it voluntarily. Some of them started getting work to be postal delivery workers. They did unexpected things. Went back to school, to junior college. Some of them had distinguished careers in museums, and so it was incredible what happened to those kids. But it was an absolutely fascinating business. Can we go back now to the discourses? Is it about time?
You can continue if you want. Let me know if they.
You let me know when we're still have got 3/4 of the agenda left to go through.
Well, we've probably got about 5/6 of the agenda to go through.
I'll tell you a secret, we're not doing too good on the agenda.
Don,
Yeah.
did any right-wing conservatives ever knock at the door and want to recruit?
Well, this was not Walnut Creek, this was San Francisco. All this was going on. Not a one was a conservative.
Well, when you saw the long hair, did you think about
Well,
young Baba?
Huh?
Did you think about young Baba and his postal code?
Well, you know, they didn't look like young Baba to me. That's all I can say. You know. But certainly, they were wonderful people, and they turned into splendid human beings. Well, let's go back now to Baba, and when he was talking to me about the discourses. So here we are, and I said, Baba, you know, there's this breed of young people who are called hippies. And yes, Baba says, I've heard the word, and so I know about them. I said, Baba, you know, I've found, because some of them have been exposed partially to the Dashmuk 5-volume edition of the Discourses, and the manner in which they react to it, I just have a deep feeling that this is going to be your Bible for the young, modern, seeking generation. How to live life by simple spiritual principle. Baba looked very, very interested. He said, that's interesting, Don. Here I am teaching the avatars business. But you know, the way he took it was grand. So he made me feel like I was introducing him to new fields. So he said, well, what do you think we should do about it? Are you cold? No. She's not my pearl anymore. Are you cold? Is it a bit chilly?
Yeah, but a little bit.
And do we have an air conditioner going, or what's going on? Maybe turn that off for a bit. Should we? Well, maybe it's principally the air conditioner that needs to go off for a bit.
The fans went on for the
I think something's changing already a little bit. I can call you Pearl. She's our Los Angeles Pearl. You wondered where all this pearl was coming from today. But that's what I've always called her in my own mind. So, Baba said, what do you think we should do about it? And I said, well, Baba, and I sort of thought, well, as I had been reading them over myself, I was always very much intrigued by 2 or 3 things. First of all, it was obvious that Dashmuk was an absolute master of words and word handling. Never made a mistake that I could see in spelling either. But he had a very curious sentence structure, which I can only describe as Indian-style English sentence structure, not as the Americans in English do. So sometimes it would be so different from my own style that I would have to reread the sentence and sort of invert it around. to be sure of the meaning. So I expressed this. I didn't express it in that detail to Bob, simply that Embellishment style was different, and that perhaps for readability, the sentences should be reorganized. And he said, yes. And so he said, and so what should we do about that? And I said, Bob, it should be very simple. You have a great many scholars in America and in England who could easily go through that and put it into proper sentence structure. So he invented something at that point. What he does is, you do it. So I haven't been, really counting on that. And so I was working along. Now here are two of the most important stories tied up with the re-editing of the Deschamps edition that I want to tell you about, because they go in so many ways, so deeply. So, all right, Don says, okay, Bob, I'll do it. So that starts in another 2-3 years of, editing in airplanes and strange places and waiting rooms and so on. I can do better in Grand Central Station in New York than I can in my own private study, really. It taught me how to do a type of total blocking off that I wouldn't have dreamed possible. And the concentration that I can do in Bedlam is better than the concentration I can do in complete quiet. Believe it or not, this to me was a very important thing that I learned. I don't understand the whole mechanics, but certainly Baba would not have involved me in that improbable environment if there wasn't something important that was involved there. I think it's a type of a spiritual or concentrated discipline. When you've got to do it, it happens naturally. And I think it's important for something way deep down inside of yourself. So think about some of these things sometimes. So here I am in this impossible, improbable environment, working on the discourses. We're going along, and one day I'm into the part of the discourses on meditation. I end up finding that I think it's 8 discourses on meditation, and if I remember the count, there are only 6 or 7 on Sanskaras. Now, isn't that absolutely incredible? Because first of all, when Baba took over Mercia de Martin, the Sufi order, under his wing in 45, one of the first things that he did to Mercia de Martin was to send her an order to take us all off of any meditation and any concentrations that she was giving. And I had just started doing some meditation. I was not attracted to it, but since I had to do it, I was doing it with some interest. And I had my nose to the grindstone. I was curious about it. I was doing it. And all of a sudden comes this order. And I was a bit disappointed. And then, when years later, I found that Baba had given out 8 discourses on meditation, I said to myself, well, why, if it's that important, why has Baba never given me a meditation? And I can't say I was burned up about it, but I was sort of curious and maybe a tiny bit unhappy. So by that time I'd had to take 2 vows of honesty to Baba, and I tried to live up to them. And I knew I had to level with Baba, so next time he says, how are you getting on with the discourses? I said, well, Baba, I'm in the middle of meditation, etc., etc., etc. And Baba, why is it that you have never given me a meditation in all these years that I've worked closely under your thumb? And you've given so many meditations in the discourses, on your great books. And instead of giving me a snappy look of his eyes, for being so petulant or forward, he looked at me and smiled and said, "Don, that's a very good question. Now, Baba will tell you. Listen closely to what Baba told you." And on this one, I think we're going to have some interchange, because he said 2-3 things that are so arguable and so different from what so many people think, that I think we've got to be open and fair about it. He said, "Don, Baba has not given you a meditation because during the time of the manifestation of the avatar, the path of love, the spiritual path of love to truth, to realization, is fully open to all humanity. And because it is fully open to all of humanity, it is open to you, and I have not had to give you any, because the path of love is the high road to return to truth and God. Now, one day, the high road of love will gradually narrow and become less available to the majority of even the most sincere seekers. And then he said something which I simply have to tell you in my own language. I interpreted to mean, finally, it will narrow to the point where it will be accessible only to the spiritual heroes on the path. So, the majority of the seekers will have to use the best of the secondary routes to realization, which is meditation. And because of the fact that during my period of avatarhood, I must provide for all of my devotees, and because for a great deal of the time they will have to use the meditation because of the relative inaccessibility of love as the major path, I must give in great detail now the discourses on meditation. Well, that was a whopping statement. So I first of all understood, all right, then obviously I've not been given meditation by Baba, because without my really knowing it, I've been struggling around on the path of love. And because that would not be fully open until he is manifested, the implication, he has certainly said indelibly, is he is already manifested. Well, I got all excited about this and told a couple of the Mandali, who are the closest that I felt to, that, well, Baba just told me he's already manifested. What's all this business, everybody waiting for him to manifest? And so I got into real trouble on that one, Glenn. There were 2 or 3 of my closest friends who looked as if they were practically going to cut me off from their friendship. They simply would not countenance the fact that possibly Baba had manifested. And everyone that I know is still waiting for him to manifest. And some wise people also say it will be so-and-so and so many years until he does manifest, and give the exact number of years that we've still got to wait. So I don't dare discuss this in, let's say, polite family circles. So I'm just telling you, this is a dynamite subject, but I just have to tell you, when I tell you the story of what Baba told me while I was working on his words, some of the things that he brought up, which I was not angling for, came up in the explanations of why this and why that. And what he was saying, went to the heart of some terribly important things. So, because of the fact that I have always promised myself I would abide by my vow of honesty to Baba, when I tell the story, I have to tell the important things that Baba included in the historical story. So I told it to you. You make of it what you particularly may want to do. What would you like to ask?
I would like to ask if, when you say Baba manifesting, is that what we often refer to as him breaking the silence?
Well, that's a good point, because then I said to myself, Baba said on several occasions that he would do 3 or 4 things all very quickly, all related together. Manifest, break his silence, give the great universal shove, drop his body. Very often all 4 would get all tangled up into the same little ball. In fact, I've been around a couple of times and he would say, now before Ben Heyman dies, I'm going to manifest and drop my body. Well, when Ben Heyman died, and Baba was still in the flesh, and I knew he hadn't dropped his body yet, but he didn't say it would be immediately. But I said to myself, well, does that mean then that he's given the universe a shove? And what do I know? Now, listen to me on this one, because I did my homework on this, because already I've been alive and fairly since 1919, and we're into the mid to late 1950s by this point. So I've been around a while. And I've been around a lot of clever young friends of mine who were on, let's say, certain spiritual disciplines, or who had parents who were theosophists, or this or that or t'other thing. And they worked hard, and they were sincere, and so on. And I honored my friends. Sometimes I thought they went a little bit overboard. Some of the words they used were so foreign to me that it almost gave me indigestion, but we lived through it. I would still accept those because they were lovable kids and I loved my friends. But what I noticed, and this was terribly important to me, as I knew these people, let's say, and really enough so I would know that they were working hard on some sort of spiritual disciplines back into the 30s, and I'm up 20 years later, I'd been noticing a little bit about the way the family squabbles and the various different personal idiosyncrasies went, and I would just have to keep saying to myself, if this is a spiritual discipline that they're on, it doesn't work awfully well. But I wouldn't tell them that that was my observation. But I was simply used to the fact that people that I loved and respected were apparently doing something where they put a lot of work into it, but I couldn't see much dividend. Now, either I was stupid or it was a slow process, but I was used to this. And then, as I started looking back after Baba had pulled a couple of these punches on me, about meditation, manifesting, and so on, and I didn't give it to you because so-and-so. And I was trying to work out, well, is there any sign that I can see in my own observations of giving creation a universal punch, push it ahead? How is it when I say my word and give this universal push, all of creation will shove ahead, even down to the ants and the whatever not. He didn't say stones, but he certainly went down to pretty low insect and so on forms. I was impressed by it. So here I was looking for evidence. I said in the 30s, no. 40s, gee, the 40s were a mess. They were a real mess. I didn't see much of anything happening, even to myself after I got to be a Sufi for quite a while. That's before we got the statue of the Roman emperor carved out from behind. I hadn't had that experience yet, you see. So I couldn't even see where Baba had done me much good, or Don Stevens' problems. But then we get into the 50s, and somewhere in the 50s I began to be aware of these strange young people doing strange experiments with drugs and wandering around and not living very civilized lives, things of that sort. And then my experience with these hippies in San Francisco. I said, there was really a dog's leg in the curve of progress around somewhere in the late 50s, early 60s. And so I said to myself, so that, somewhere around then, if what Baba's told me about meditation and manifesting is for real, then I can check, yes, I think I saw something that related to a universal push. And then I remember this business, all right down through animals and fishes and so on. So I looked a little bit more in my bag of tricks of memories, and I looked back into my experience with dogs. And I love dogs. I told you about my dog Denny, who was given to me by my father when I was 1 year old. And I always remember when he came into the living room from the kitchen in Emily, Nevada. He was so funny because when he came through that door at night coming home from work, he would have his hands out here and this and that. At that time, he came in like that. And instantly, I sat up and said, what's happening to my daddy? He doesn't walk in like this is 1 year of age. Isn't that interesting? So, my daddy walks in, and then all of a sudden, he turns one of them out, and he's got something that looks like a fur muff in his hand. And the fur muff jumps out of his hand and runs across the floor, jumps up onto the couch where I am, bangs into my chest and knocks me over. I scream to my mother comes running from the kitchen, and this is my birthday present when I'm 1 year old. So here we are. So I love dogs, you see. And I grew up with Denny, and we had a wonderful time. And then, of course, after Denny, along came Lucky. And Lucky was a Cocker Spaniel. And my Cocker Spaniel was almost the exact age of Monty's, Peter, a Cocker Spaniel. So we would correspond back and forth. Whose Cocker Spaniel was beating the other one out? Who was more clever? Who was more intuitive? So we had a great correspondence back and forth on this. So, of course, I know my lucky people. Except for that chipmunk picture of Peter, or, you know, Peter with the chipmunk crawling all over the top of his head. Monty sent that to me just to prove how in he was with the rest of the tribe. So, I was thinking to myself, there is, as loyal as I was to Daddy, I said, well, Peter was, not Peter, but Lucky was a whole step above him. Danny was a magnificent dog, but he didn't have the intuition and the quirks and the humor that Lucky did. He could do such clever, tricky, cute things. And then a friend of mine had a dachshund who had an absolutely atrocious temper and did horrible things, but was just so blessed clever that this dog, Madam, was even a step above Lucky, you see. And then I've been around other people with dogs, and I saw dogs in the course of 10 years just go leaps and bounds up in some sort of a progression and on the scale of intelligence, intuition. And then I had a canary. This is the last one, then we'll go on. How are we doing on time?
Eventually, we have to work up to from the animal kingdom to the human spiritual place.
Oh, eventually. Okay, we'll try to get there. So here we are, and I've got this canary, Fred. Fred was a lovely canary. And it was about, let's say, halfway through the first sessions with the first 4 hippies. And a 5th hippie by the name of Bob Royton came along. Awful nice guy. He's still a practicing psychiatrist in the Morton area. So I hope he still remembers this if you ever check it with him. But I was chatting with Bob Royton, and he was saying this and I was saying that, and all of a sudden he stops and says, "What's that going on? Do you have the radio on?" And I listen, and I hear the thematic violin solo from Saint-Saëns Violin Concerto. And I said, "Oh, I didn't turn the radio on. What's that?" I go back, and Fred is whistling the violin solo from Saint-Saëns Violin Concerto. Can you imagine? He had heard it on the good music station in San Francisco, fallen in love with it. He sang it all the rest of his life. Isn't that incredible? Incredible. So I said, well, when I stopped to think of it, I've seen good evidence in human beings. We started with that. You see the hippies. And we end up with the end. He's forgotten already the first part of the story. My killer was out around on the circuit somewhere for 2 minutes. So there we are.
He slept for 24 hours.
He did.
He hasn't.
He hasn't. No, I know. He's putting in good time now. So here we are. Certainly, as far as I was concerned, there was a lot to back up what I thought Bob had said to me pretty clearly that he had manifested, and that I saw tangible evidence of a great, great show to all of living creation that I had contact with. So I took it for pretty real. Now there's one other story related to the discourses. Oh, we'll get a little bit more done this afternoon. So, but this is in some ways a fairly tough one. You know, every once in a while, sad things also happen around the avatar, so this was a bit sad for me. I'm going on, we've gotten through the business of meditation, I've done some of my speculation and homework. Yes, Adele?
I just wondered, the question of whether Mr. Purdom, Charles Purdom, would be a colleague in this discourses at any time. Is that ever around?
Not Purdom, no.
Not Purdom.
But sometime we've got to go back to the story of Baba and Purdom and Purdom's God-Man, because when the God-Man came out, then some very important interchanges happened between Baba and Purdom, and I was the message back and forth between the two of them. So don't let us forget that. But I'll go on into the rest of the story of the discourses, and then we'll go, I hope, into Purdom if we've got time. We've got all of this business meditation back in the background, and I'm working away every time I come. Baba says, how are the discourses coming along? And then finally the tenor changes to just a little hint of impatience. Donna, are you getting close to the stage? when it might be wise to have some conversations with a possible publisher.